It's a new dawn. It's a new day. It's a new life.
It's a new way to vacation. Welcome to the 4 parks of Universal Orlando Resort, including the all-new Universal Epic Universe. From the wizarding world of Harry Potter to Jurassic Park to spectacular themed hotels, we offer an entire week's worth of excitement. Vacations will never be the same. Visit universalorlando.com.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show. This is Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party here in New York, as well as the Vice Chair of the Suffolk County Party. With us is Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. Later on the show, we'll be fortunate indeed to have Congressman Nick LaLota from the 1st Congressional District out in Suffolk County, a very, very distinguished member of Congress, a graduate of the Naval Academy, 3 tours of duty overseas with the Navy, a great congressman, and Eric and Jesse and I will be talking to Congressman LaLota later on. I want to begin this show, gentlemen, by saying, what's it with this guy, Tim Walz? Where did you get this guy from obscurity? Way out of left field, as the New York Post said. He's not only in left field because nobody's ever heard of him, and nobody could really believe that they got this guy and they're putting him on the ticket to be the Vice President of the United States, one heartbeat away from the presidency. But he's also out of left field because he is a radical leftist. Everything this man stands for is radical left. He's as left as Kamala Harris and maybe more so. He wants to take away all fossil fuels, all fossil-driven cars. He wants to support the BLM and Antifa types, because what did he do? When they were rioting in Minneapolis, burning down the precinct, he did nothing. Did nothing. The state is overtaxed. The state is overregulated. People are living the state of Minnesota by the hundreds of thousands. He believes it's just swell that boys should be in ladies' bathrooms. What is with this guy and what's with the Democratic Party? Democratic Party is now absolutely, positively been taken over by the radical left fringe. Jesse, what say you?
Your Honor, I can't disagree with you. Maybe I could add this. I could not understand why they made this choice, but certainly this is the most progressive, left-leaning slate in the history of presidential politics. Tim Walz, in his own words, called his response under his direction as the governor of Minnesota to the riots of 2020 an abject failure. And why is that? Because he's a sympathizer, he's an enabler of the Black Lives Matter, the Antifa zealots that engaged in those riots. He is a defund the police type of advocate. He is for this Green New scam. And when it comes to law enforcement, you touched upon it. He wants to take away the guns from people. He wants to get it to go away from the Second Amendment. He wants his response and a fraud that was in the tens of millions, hundreds of millions during his tenure during COVID, and the COVID fraud is immeasurable and inexcusable. That was under his tenure. This is, I'm not the type of Republican that says that, would say thank you for this type of a selection for VP. I don't think that we should say that they should have gone with a Shapiro or with a Senator Kelly. If I'm when I'm in the draft room or the campaign room and I see what my opponents make and I see the type of candidate come forward, I'll go after them on their policies and their record as they are, but I would not be very vocal about being thankful and criticizing at the behest of a better choice. I think that's a mistake that the Trump campaign, that the RNC is making. You know what? We don't need to tell anybody else would have been better or was a concern. We should just focus on this ultra left wing, the most progressive, soft on crime, socialistic presidential slate in the history of presidential politics. I think that the media is going to try, and I think here in Newsday, they said analysts said that Tim Walz will be able to speak to the middle class. That's not true at all. He's a socialist. He's raised taxes. He's anti-policing. He's in favor of the pro-inflation measures that the Harris-Biden administration have been engaging in. His own record demonstrates that. This guy wants to turn us into a Marxist state, into a socialist state. And nothing they can do to try and whitewash that, with his record and his own words, are going to be able to confuse the American people.
Yeah, first of all, the first question should be, is this man who's going to be a heartbeat away from the presidency qualified to lead this country? And I say to you, Harris is not qualified to lead this country, and this guy is even less so qualified to run this country. But I want to turn this over to Eric now for your thoughts.
Well, he left out the single most important characteristic that he had, the best thing going for him to get this nomination. He's not Jewish. He's not a supporter of Israel.
Yes.
The Democrat Party has an anti-Semitism problem. There's an anti-Jewish problem. There's an anti-Israel problem. He was picked because he wasn't Jewish, period. By far and away, the most logical choice for her was the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. They need, by any measure, they need Pennsylvania to win. It also links it up to the blue wall. He was a moderate. He could expand the base. But his crime was that when there were Jew-hating tent cities and protests at the University of Pennsylvania, he told the president of the University of Pennsylvania, this crap has to stop. Anti-Semitism has no place in Pennsylvania or anywhere in the United States. And that was an unforgivable sin. His crime is that when he was in college, he wrote an essay about why a two-state solution wouldn't work, because the Palestinians have no interest in a two-state solution.
And he was prescient, because that's true today.
He was prescient, but unfortunately, normally as you get older, you get wiser. But because I guess he was somewhat politically driven, he's adopted the mantra of the progressive left that a two-state solution is a good idea. It's a horrible idea. He was right the first time. But the fact that he wrote this essay when he was in college, the fact that he condemned anti-Semitism, that was a bridge too far, because this is a guy who by far and away made the most sense. I can tell you that at the highest levels of the Trump campaign and throughout the Republican Party, top to bottom, they were worried sick that she would pick Shapiro. And there was a huge sigh of relief when she didn't. Now, at the Republican National Committee, the Republican National Convention, the audience was asked, do we stand with Israel? And the place went wild in support. They will not ask that question at the Democratic National Committee, because whoever asks that question will be booed. Walz certainly won't ask that question, because this is a guy who has given his full-throated support in endorsement for Ilhan Omar.
And who is she?
So she is a Somali immigrant, now an American citizen, a congresswoman from Minnesota, vile anti-Semite, seeks the destruction of the state of Israel, could care less if Jews are exterminated. She and Rashida Tlaib and AOC, the integral parts of the squad, vilely anti-Semitic. This is a woman that he has come out and supported, full-throated support, repeatedly for her reelection. So why pick him? He wasn't Jewish. But in addition, what else is he? He's dull. Why does that matter? Because one thing that the progressive left does not want to have happen is if Harris loses or if she wins, they don't want to have a white guy be elevated to be a front runner for president. That was one of the reasons why they didn't pick Shapiro. It was more, they were willing to risk losing. It was more important to stop the Jew.
Because he's perceived as being also moderate.
He was moderate, and he was a rising star, and he could win, and it would elevate him to be the front runner. That they couldn't have. There's no risk of Walz ever becoming a front runner. The progressive left is wedded to having a minority, a woman, and that could be great because a woman in a minority could be the most qualified person. But they don't care about any qualification other than the fact that they are a minority or they are a woman. And don't ask me, ask Joe Biden, because remember when he was going to pick his vice presidential candidate, he promised that he was going to pick a woman of color. He injected race into this, and that's how we got Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris. I do apologize. I do want to pronounce her name correctly. Kamala Harris. But you're 100% right. But it also demonstrates that Kamala Harris is a radical ideological progressive.
And also has no spine because she didn't resist the crazy left.
Well, that's really the question. Was it because she had no spine that she couldn't resist the crazy left? Or is it because she's of the crazy left and agreed with them? We don't know the answer to that. And even if she ultimately decided not to pick Shapiro, irrespective of the fact that he was Jewish, that it was irrelevant to her decision, what we do know is that a significant segment of the Democrat Party was going ballistic at the fact that he was Jewish. It was an issue. They didn't care that he was white. They didn't care he was a guy. They didn't care that he was straight. They didn't care about his policies. They didn't care anything about it. Their view was he had to be stopped because he was Jewish. You know, at the Republican National Convention, Matt Brooks of the Republican Jewish Coalition was invited to speak at the convention precisely because he was Jewish and precisely because he was advocating for the American-Israeli relationship. There will be Jews who will speak at the Democrat National Convention, but it is incidental that they are Jewish. They are not speaking because they are Jewish. They happen to be Jewish and they are speaking. And they are not going to be advocating for the American-Israeli relationship. If anything, they're going to be advocating against it. That is going to be what you're going to be seeing. You're going to get these mindless tropes of we recognize Israel's right to defend itself.
What does that mean?
To the Democrats, what that means is as the bombs are coming in and falling on Israel, the Israelis have the right to blow the bombs out of the sky.
Then what?
And then they're not allowed to retaliate. That's the bridge too far. We all remember playing dodgeball as kids, right? What's the game? You throw a ball at the other person and then it hits them, then they're out. You can block the ball, you can catch the ball. This is their view of Israel is you can play dodgeball, but you can only catch the ball. You can't throw it back. You can't try to get the other guy out. So eventually you're going to lose. So by adopting the moral high ground, quote unquote, of saying Israel has a right to defend itself, they are actually saying eventually Israel will be destroyed because if they never go on offense, if they're never allowed to retaliate, the state will ultimately be destroyed. And that's the strategy. When you hear someone say, and they limit themselves to saying, we recognize Israel's right to defend itself, that's what they're saying. What they should be saying is we recognize Israel's right to national security and to do what is necessary to ensure that security.
And that, of course, would include a preemptive strike when you know the other side is about to hit you.
Exactly. And what is the Biden administration doing to the Israelis right now? They are preventing them from preempting Iran, who's about to hit them, or Hezbollah, who is about to hit them. So we can talk about the difference between 1967 and 1973 in the next segment. But that's who Mr. Waltz is, and what Harris has told us is she is a radical, ideological, lefty progressive.
Jesse, we're going to close down this segment in a couple of minutes. What are your thoughts? Jesse?
He was so blown away, he's speechless.
I am speechless.
Thank you. God, Jesse, in all the years I know you, that's the first time ever.
Exactly. I wasn't even speechless on last Saturday.
No.
But, I'm so used to that. I don't want to ruffle. For our listeners, I don't want to ruffle the judge because sometimes I move papers around and he hates when he hears that in the background, so I put my mic on mute. You're absolutely right. I didn't know we were going to be getting into the selection process, but you're absolutely right. This clearly, more than anything, demonstrates that the fringe left-wing progressive have captured the Democratic Party. And what's even worse than that, and it's worse, it's bad for America, it's bad for Israel, it's bad for Jews throughout the world and globally, is that anti-Semitism is now basically part of the Democrat platform.
It's de rigueur, as they say.
It has been ingrained in them.
It's been normalized. It's been normalized.
Yes, that is the word, Your Honor. It has been normalized. It is the leaders of the Democratic Party, their elected officials, and those who stay silent are all
like Chuck Schumer. Like Chuck Schumer.
Exactly. So that's what we've demonstrated here. And, I guess in the calculations, if the Kamala Harris campaign, they're saying, okay, I have my partners and my buddies and my cohorts of big tech, social media companies. I have the mainstream media. They're going to whitewash my entire record. Everything I said from 2024, back. They're going to whitewash it. And I'm going to put forward and flip-flop on every position. I was never for open borders. I was never for BLM and donating to get rioters for bail. I was never for defunding the police.
And I always love fracking. And I always love fracking. Right?
And I always love fracking. That's a good one, too. But they have that, they're going to be whitewashed. So I'm going to pretend I'm a moderate. But I'm going to send a message, and I'm going to cave. That's what she did. That's what the Harris campaign has done, what Kamala Harris herself has done, the Democratic National Committee has done, and every Democrat that has stayed silent on this issue. They have allowed the normalization of anti-Semitic attitudes and policies in the Democratic Party. That's wrong. It's wrong for America. It's wrong for members of the Jewish faith. It's wrong for Israel. And it's wrong for all of our partners in the world, because when are they next?
I would argue that anti-Semitism is a platform of the Democrat Party.
I agree with you.
And by the way, earlier today, when we were covering the Sid Rosenberg show, Sid and Friends on WABC, so John Catsimatidis, Curtis Lee, and I were covering the show because Sid was stuck out in Florida because of the storm. We had Governor Rendell on, Ed Rendell, who's a former
Democratic governor.
Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, Democratic mayor of Philadelphia.
He was
Democratic,
Jewish. He was Jewish.
Democratic district attorney. And he said that this radical fringe really doesn't speak for the Democratic Party. It's only a small little segment. And with all due respect to Governor Rendell, who is he kidding?
He's not paying attention. Or he's lying.
Not paying attention.
I mean, really.
The facts are the facts.
Well, no, until they get whitewashed, until they get erased by this Orwellian whitewashing machine that's the Democratic Party and its media acolytes. We have to take a break now. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. We'll be back in a few moments with more interesting conversation, and we look forward to having with us Congressman Nick LaLota, the Republican congressman from the 1st District of Suffolk County, a great leader, a great patriot, and having Nick LaLota is going to be our privilege and pleasure on Let the Record Show. Please stay tuned.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
I already love same-day delivery with Shipt, but it's so much better since I signed up for Target Circle 360. Why? Because I no longer pay price markups from the majority of stores through Shipt. Only a handful of alcohol retailers and items don't count. That means no markups on groceries, pet food, even home goods and makeup. So to recap, I have more time to catch up on life while someone shops for me, and I spend less. It's a win-win. Order now at shipt.com/360. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states, and MLSConsumerAccess.org, number 3030.
The rural way of life is about making everyone feel at home. Tractor Supply chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform intelligent customer service. Together, we put the power of AI to work across 2,200 stores, keeping things running seamlessly inside, curbside, and countryside. This is elevated customer experience. This is Tractor Supply with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We are back on Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted commentator, essayist, and attorney Eric Levine, I'm Judge Richard Weinberg, and joining us now is Congressman Nicholas Vallota from the 1st Congressional District out in Suffolk County. Nick is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy. He did 3 tours of duty overseas. He's a great American. He's a great patriot. Nick, welcome to Let the Record Show.
Hey, great to be on with you guys. Looking forward to a healthy discussion about the future of our great country.
Well, I'm very concerned about the future of this country. And since I read everything that you send out and you talk about, there are a number of issues I wanted to bring up to you. I mean, the first one, I want to get your opinion about the direction of this country and the Democratic Party when you have Harris and Walz as the nominees of the Democratic Party going into the November election. What are your thoughts on that?
Unfortunately, I think it's a doubling down of the policies and the approaches that have brought our country to where we are today. We're on the wrong track. We need to get back into the right direction. Things about the border, things about our economy. I thought that Kamala Harris would recognize this and would pick a more moderate running mate, somebody who had a greater appeal, and Josh Shapiro from a big coin flip state of Pennsylvania with 20 electoral college votes, to me was the obvious choice if she wanted to embrace better energy policies, better policies towards national security and Israel. And I thought that politically speaking, those 20 votes were on the table if she went with Shapiro, but instead turned a hard left once again and picked somebody who allowed those George Floyd riots to rage, who's got terrible energy policies, wants to give free health care and education in college to illegals in this country. And that would only further exacerbate the very things that are challenging my constituents, New Yorkers, and Americans that the federal government under the Biden-Harris administration is causing.
Do you see any confidence in having Governor Walz as the nominee for vice president?
No, I think that only makes it more troubling, unfortunately. It's just this echo chamber of open borders and weakness internationally that we would have under a Harris-Walz administration. And I know that at least my constituents here in Suffolk County want a new direction. We want to be strong internationally. We want to be energy independent here within our own borders. We want to secure our southern border. This is the direction my constituents want our country to take. And I sure hope, and especially in the swing states who really have a lot to say in our electoral college, this is where I hope those voters want to put our country.
Eric.
Yeah, so recently we had this deal, and maybe you can help us out. You're on the Armed Services Committee. Maybe you can give us some insights into this. This deal for the 9/11 murderers, terrorists, that they were going to give up, the United States would give up the death sentence in exchange for they accept life sentences. And then not the president, but that the Secretary of Defense, Austin, nixed that deal. Do you have any insights as to how that came about and why it was Austin who ultimately made that decision and not the president?
Yes. So what a flawed decision that was announced several days ago that would have done a deal with a mass murderer terrorist that took the lives of nearly 3,000 Americans. Of course, many of us New Yorkers were personally impacted by 9/11, and even those who survived it are now suffering through some tremendous health issues. And why a plea deal was ever on the table to me is unconscionable. I haven't been the biggest supporter of the death penalty, but if there's ever a time to use it, it's absolutely this time. And for there even to have been a consideration for prosecutors or folks in the DOD to do a deal with such a terrorist, such a coward, such a murderer is really beyond any sort of realm of normalcy. I'm pleased that Secretary Austin, with whom I haven't seen eye to eye all of my first 2 years in Congress, I'm pleased that he did step in to nullify this deal. But that deal should have never been on the table. There should have been orders from the White House early on that we're going to prosecute Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to the fullest, to hold them accountable, to tell the 9/11 families that we're going to hold our adversaries accountable, and to tell the world that when you do something like this to America, we will give you no quarter whatsoever.
So one of the things I thought that was particularly interesting, because this was going on while we're doing hostage negotiations, and, thank God Evan Gershkovich is home, along with some of the other American hostages being held abroad. But there are risks associated with making deals for hostages. But what really resonated with me, given the timing of this, was if you put these people in prison, if you put KSM in a prison with a life sentence, it would strike me as that would make terrorists and other bad actors around the globe want to take American hostages to try to get these people out. I mean, am I wrong?
So that's a good point, and I think that the price for America getting its hostages back has only gone up and up, given how weak this administration has been on the issue. You know, if we remember back to a couple of years ago, Brittany Griner, who were happy is home. We should want to get every American back home. We shouldn't care about what their political preferences are. We should want to get every American back home. But the price we paid to get that individual home was, in my opinion, far too hard. We had to trade for the merchant of death in order to get our basketball star back home. I don't think that was a fair trade. But what it did is it raised the price for every other future hostage who we want to get home. And ultimately, those are going to be prices that America can't pay. And I agree with you that now we are telling the world, if we're going to keep Khalid Sheikh Mohammed here alive and in our prison, that yes, they can grab our people and try to barter, our prisoner for theirs. And I think that would bode for a poor, weak, non-secure future for us.
Congressman LaLotta, I want to ask you this question about something that's deeply important to me, to Eric Levine, to Jesse Garcia, and that's American support for the state of Israel and a fight against anti-Semitism in the United States and around the world. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'm an ardent supporter of Americans supporting Israel's defense of itself. Of course, Israel should have the right to exist. It's sad that we even have to say that. And of course, Israel should have the right to defend its own borders. And what American policymakers should understand is the same people who want to wipe Israel off of the map are the same people who champ death to America. It's the same people who were involved in the first bombing of the World Trade Center, the bombing of the Cole, the second attack on the World Trade Center, and other attacks in between, and October 7th. It's the same zealots who live in that area who want us both dead. And if we understand that from a national security perspective, of course we're going to understand that America should be locked at the hip from a national security perspective with Israel. Moreover, we are two nations who were born upon religious freedom. That is a key fabric in both of our institutions that we want to celebrate people's right to be able to practice their own religion. And here in the United States, when anti-Semitism rears its ugly head, every politician, regardless of party, should speak out against it, should denounce it. We have large platforms on our social media and elsewhere. And unfortunately, this has now become a partisan issue. A couple of 10 years ago, it wasn't. Everybody, regardless of party, understood those two things, that we should stick by Israel from a national security perspective, and anti-Semitism is ugly and shouldn't be here. But now, unfortunately, this has become a red versus blue issue. And I'll go back to the selection of Waltz over Shapiro. To me, that is a signal from Kamala Harris that she will continue the weakness of the Biden-Harris administration on its approach to Israel's right to exist and defend itself. We're going down the wrong path right there. We need to get back on the right track.
Yeah, one of the points I would just want to make, I think that you're 100% right. I could not agree more. But Israel's enemies are our enemies. What's a perfect example? The Israelis recently targeted Fouad Shakur, the number 2 of Hezbollah, Nasrallah's right-hand man. Not only was he the one responsible for the terrorist attack in the Golan against the Druze village, but he was the architect of the murder of 241 Marines in Beirut during the Reagan administration. And if that doesn't highlight the fact that our enemies are the same, nothing does.
It's true. It's true. You have to understand America's history to be able to take a position on with whom we should be friends and with whom we should be adversaries. And when you know and appreciate America's history from Beirut to other parts of the Middle East and beyond, you should come to no other reasonable conclusion that Israel should be America's strongest ally and vice versa.
Nick, I want to ask you about energy policy. Jesse and Eric and I have talked for a long time now. Instead of being energy independent, we've become energy eunuchs. And that's because of the Biden-Harris administration. Instead of supplying the world their own needs, and we've given resources, economic resources, to our enemies. So Russia and Iran are the beneficiaries when we shut down oil production, when when Biden signed the executive order saying that natural gas, there had to be a pause. It was absolutely frightening. And yesterday, Eric and I had the pleasure of being with Speaker Johnson at a lunch that was run by Eric. And Eric, do you want to tell them the story that Johnson said with Biden? Listen to this, Congressman.
So specifically as relates to?
Well, he has the meeting with him, and he tells him about the executive order, what he understood.
Oh, yeah. He didn't understand that he had given an executive order.
Biden did not.
So the speaker says, Mr. President, why are you banning natural gas? And Biden says to him, I didn't ban natural gas. He says, he pulls up the order, they print it out, and he shows him, Mr. President, you banned natural gas. And he said, I didn't realize I'd done that.
Now, what do you make of that?
I don't know what you can make of that.
What do you make of that?
But the guy didn't even know what he was signing, and they're just putting documents in front of him to sign. Who's running the show?
So put aside the implications of the terrible policy that is banning natural gas, but that the White House, the country, the military, and everything in between is rudderless right now. And it's been rudderless for a while. I mean, I know that Speaker Johnson had an interaction with President Biden, I think it was 6 months ago. And everybody's known for a good 18, 24 months, President Biden has not had the faculties to properly conduct his office. It's sad, and there's a lot of things on a human level that we should reflect upon about how an individual does not have the mental capacity to fill that role. But I think what the biggest tragedy as we look forward is the vice president, his cabinet, players in the national media all covered for him, gaslit us. Whenever reasonable people who were living in the light said President Biden does not have the mental capacity to do his job, they gaslit us and told us that, no, that was just a partisan statement and it's improper to criticize him. And Harris would say, no, he's the smartest guy in the room. He's the most aware. He's got the most brilliant ideas. Took us for fools for a good 18, 24 months when most of us had a strong sense. And certainly the VP in the cabinet who spent a lot of time with him absolutely knew or should have known that he is way, way, way past his prime mentally and creates a lot of vulnerabilities. I think it's the reason why you had things like October 7th or Russia invading Ukraine or China becoming more and more hostile, sending its spy balloon across our country or sending its people, tens of thousands of military-age males across our southern border with no consequence, ripping off our intellectual property. These, to me, are all consequences of the world understanding that we do not have a competent commander-in-chief right now. It's sad, but what's really sad is the people who covered for him along the way. There needs to be a day of accountability for those folks.
And the last issue I want to talk to you about before we have to go on break, Congressman, and we are speaking with Congressman Nick LaLota of the 1st Congressional District out in Suffolk County, who's running for re-election. Nick is graduate of the Naval Academy, did 3 tours of duties overseas. He's an attorney. He's a great patriot and a good friend. Nick, as a former judge and a former prosecutor, I'm deeply concerned about public safety. What are your thoughts about where we are in public safety and what has to be done?
The rules have to be applied. The rules have to be adhered to. Prosecutors need to prosecute. I don't care if they're from a blue state, blue city, red city. If there are laws in the books, those laws ought to be enforced. They're not being enforced at our southern border. They're allowing more and more migrants to cross, not only at ports of entry, but in between them. And Vice President Harris has announced publicly she supports decriminalizing illegally crossing the border. There should be a mere civil offense. I think it should be what it's always been. And by the way, you can go back to Bill Clinton's State of the Union addresses back in the 90s, and he would say the things that basically Trump says today, that yes, we're a nation of immigrants, but we're also a nation of laws. And unless we enforce those laws, that chaos will ensue, and chaos is ensuing in places like New York City with migrant crises. It's ensuing with 200,000 fentanyl deaths, the leading cause of males 18 to 45. These are the consequences when our prosecutors, our judges, and our politicians don't enforce the laws that are in our books. We have to change course. This election that's 90 days away gives voters an opportunity to make their communities and their country safer by electing individuals who have respect for the rule of law.
Well, Congressman Nick LaLota, thank you very much for joining Let the Record Show this week. You're an inspiration to all of us. We need people like you in the United States Congress fighting for America and for America's allies with common sense. We wish you every good wish. God bless you and God bless America. Thank you, Congressman LaLota.
Thanks for having me on, gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. This is the Let the Record Show. We're taking a break. We'll be back in a few moments with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We'll be back in just a few moments for our final segment of this week's show. Stay tuned.
This is Let the Record Show.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at StitchFix.com/Spotify. That's StitchFix.com/Spotify.
Build professional skills this semester with Adobe Creative Cloud and create standout work both in and out of the classroom. Save big on professional creativity tools. Students get 65% off Adobe Creative Cloud, including Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, Acrobat Pro, and 20-plus creative apps. No matter what project you're working on, Adobe Creative Cloud apps can help you take it to the next level. Visit adobe.com/student to learn more.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We're back on Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party, as well as the County Chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party. With Jesse and with me is Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. And we're very fortunate indeed to have Congressman Nick LaLota of the 1st Congressional District out in Suffolk County, a distinguished graduate of the Naval Academy, a Navy officer who did 3 tours of duty overseas, an attorney, and a common-sense person who fights to protect and defend America and American values. So I want to begin this by talking about the reinvention of Kamala Harris. It seems to me what we're getting now is a great whitewash. Everything she's ever said, everything she's ever done is being flyspecked and being deleted. It's one more attempt by big media and the Democratic Party to gaslight the American people, to tell you black is white and white is black, and it's not raining out right now as I look outside with people with umbrellas, because who are you going to believe, your eyes or what riff the Democratic Party and the media is trying to sell you? Jesse, what are your thoughts?
I think it's very simple. This is the same media that protected and lied to the American people, covered up for the Biden administration on the cognitive status of President Biden, is doing the same thing. But what they're going even further, Your Honor, what they're doing is they're scrubbing their own stories. They're cleaning up their own stories that they've written from 2019 to present, to right before the debacle, and that Kamala Harris was going to become the anointed candidate of the Democratic Party for president, wiping out a mere 14 million votes that were cast for Joe Biden over the course of the last year. But when you look at her record, she's wrong on everything. And this is one thing where I do believe where social media is going to be helpful, because there are screenshots, there are videos, there are interviews that can be shared around by political parties like myself, candidates like the presidential candidates, super PACs, but individuals. Let's not forget. Let's look at her record. She was advocating and supported the support for funds to go to Black Lives Matters and rioters in criminal justice in Minnesota. I think it was called the Minnesota Freedom Fund. On healthcare, she was original co-sponsor of Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All. She was an original co-sponsor of AOC's Green New Deal, which we call the Green New Scam, which would and will, if implemented, cost America 5.2 million jobs. She wants to ban, in fact, she said she wants to ban by executive order the AR-15 in her first 100 days in office. And listen, we call her the border czar. We have videos of her speaking to, I believe it was Lester Holt, who even, she admits she's never been to the border. She hasn't been to Europe either, but she was the border czar. And what's happened? 11 million illegal immigrants, migrants have come across the border during the Harris-Biden administration and their policies. They've removed all of the Trump-era safeguards and executive orders there. We can go down the line, student loan forgiveness. One that should be very disconcerting to every American. When they don't agree with the Supreme Court, they decide to change the rules of the game, packing the Supreme Court, adding new seats so that they can control the narrative, the judicial system as well, through the Congress and the executive branch. And of course, inflation's at almost 5%. It was at a high of 9%, but no one has to be told that it costs more for a gallon of gas, more for your groceries, more for when you, in this month, when everyone's going to be buying their back to school supplies for their children, that everything's gone up. Who was the tying vote? The tie-breaking vote in the Senate for the stimulus package that was called, the 1.9 trillion, with T, stimulus package to fight inflation. It was Kamala Harris. She's been wrong on every issue, and her partners and her buddies in the mainstream media and in big tech and in big corporations are trying to whitewash that. But I think there's too much record online right now for her to escape it. That's why she's dodging and using her own version of the basement strategy that Biden used in 2020 to be elected.
You mean
she's hiding?
She's
from the
hiding.
press,
She stands behind the teleprompter.
Calling her on it.
Right. Nobody's calling her on it.
The only difference is
as we were taping this show, they both landed, both Vance and Kamala Harris and Walz landed in Wisconsin for different appearances. Vance at least had the moxie to try and confront her, ask her the questions. Why is she hiding from the press? And even joined the campaign press that follows Kamala Harris and Tim Walz around to say, why aren't you holding their feet to the fire? What questions did she ask? This is the basement strategy that's not going to work twice in 4 years.
Well, the only difference is that Kamala Harris realizes she's in the basement. I don't think Joe knew where he was. But what we see going on, I mean, everybody, we've said this before on the show. If you haven't read it, read George Orwell's 1984.
Yes.
That's what we are seeing. It's turning language it's weaponizing language. It's taking common everyday terms and giving them the exact opposite definition so that you can gaslight people and make them believe you're saying something that you're not. Here's the perfect example. How was Kamala Harris nominated? She has never gotten a single vote running for president. When she ran in 2020, just before she got 0 votes to run for president, she called Joe Biden a racist, and then she dropped out of the race. She had no delegates. This time around, there were 14 million votes cast for delegates to the Democratic National Convention. All were for Joe Biden. 0 for her. To this moment, Kamala Harris has never gotten a single vote in a primary or a general election for president.
So much for democracy.
Exactly. Yet, that's the democratic process if you listen to these people. I mean, it's really more like the People's Republic of China. The Communist Party says this is our nominee, and therefore the people will love her. So it's a people-based campaign. The rejoinder to that from the Democrats is, well, they ran on a ticket, and she's going to get the votes of delegates, at the convention, which she, actually she got it before the convention, but she got the delegate votes. Well, who knew that the Soviet Union was really a democratic state, because the Politburo would get together and they would vote for Brezhnev. They voted. It's a democracy. Brezhnev was elected just like Kamala Harris is being nominated. Look, democracy means people vote. No Democrat has voted for Kamala Harris, yet she's the nominee. Then you get to her speech and her coming out party. All of a sudden, she's foreclosed borders. And she's bragging about how the Biden administration has closed the borders. Well, now all of a sudden, open borders really means closed borders. It really means sealed borders. And that she was never the border czar, but she was in charge of finding root causes in Nicaragua and El Salvador and Guatemala. And since illegal immigration is down from those three countries, it proves what a success story she was. Now, of course, we all know that she was the border czar. There was no limitation as to what she was supposed to be doing. But now all of a sudden, under this Orwellian concept of language, open borders means sealed borders. Talking about inflation. Well, all of a sudden it's not inflation, it's higher prices. Well, what caused the higher prices?
Donald Trump.
Well, what else?
Kamala Harris said Donald Trump is responsible for inflation.
It's really unbelievable. You have these higher prices. And what's her solution to that? She claims that people are gouging. There's price gouging. There's no inflation. There are higher prices because people are engaging in illegal activity. There's no evidence of any gouging. There's evidence, of course, and proof that there's inflation, and that's why the prices are higher. But apparently, there's no inflation. So it's sound economic policy. The courts. When Donald Trump or any Republican takes issue with something that Alvin Bragg or some incompetent Supreme Court justice in the New York Supreme does, it's an assault on the court system and a threat to democracy. But when Chuck Schumer goes to the steps of the Supreme Court and calls out Neil Gorsuch and Kavanaugh by name, and someone shows up at Kavanaugh's house to threaten to kill him, that's saving democracy. That's respect for the courts. Joe Biden wants to unconstitutionally change how the courts operate, but that's saving the court system. That's saving democracy. So we need to destroy democracy and destroy the courts to save democracy and save the courts. Racism, bigotry. We all agree it's bad. But from the progressive left, the social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda is inherently racist and anti-Semitic. Because everything is rooted in viewing everything through the lens of race and religion. You must be a racist. And unless you are a racist, you are a racist. That's the argument.
No, you have to admit you're a racist, then you're a racist.
No, if you admit you're a racist, then you're a racist. And if you don't admit you're a racist, you're racist.
You're still a racist.
But on the progressive left, the DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the social justice, it's all based on this notion of race and gender. And if you're white, you're an oppressor. And if you're a person of color, you're an oppressed. You are no bigger or smaller than your race or your religion. That's what completely defines you. Who knew that Martin Luther King was really a racist? Because he wanted to look at the content of somebody's character. He wanted to make race irrelevant. He believed that the American dream and that the America he knew and loved was based on being colorblind and that everybody had equal opportunity, not guaranteed equal results. But in order to achieve this guaranteed equal results that the social justice movement demands, they must call everybody a racist who disagrees with them.
By the way, Walz, the governor of Minnesota, listen, you know what they're doing, Jesse and Eric? They're trying to show this guy, he's kind of like fathers knows best. He's kind of a mild-mannered, funny, Midwestern guy, not particularly annoying in terms of personality, but the hidden agenda is he's crazy left. He's the guy who said socialism is just about being neighborly. I mean, is he kidding?
No, he bragged about being a socialist.
Jesse, you come from people who fled Cuba because of socialism and communism. Is that neighborly when Castro was killing people, imprisoning them, making them disappear, suppressing all freedoms? Was that neighborliness?
That was not neighborly. Maybe unless you're, if you're a Fidel Castro. Listen, I think all you need to do is ask, and we have done this, and the press has done this, whether they publish it or not is depending on what source it is. Ask anyone that comes from Cuba, Russia, China, any of these communist or totalitarian states.
100%. 100%.
They are here for a reason. My father looked across a sea of 99 miles and saw freedom, and he worked his butt off to try and get there. And he was successful. By the grace of God, he was successful. You know, I just want to go back to, for a moment, to 14 million, Democrat votes just being discounted. And, you know, the Democrats, to speak about the area protectors of democracy, no, I believe they are the destructors and the disruptors of democracy. In round numbers, there was a primary held here in April of 2024 where Joe Biden was on the ballot. So was Donald Trump and a bunch of other candidates. Here in Suffolk County, it cost about $3 million to conduct that primary. Wow. I would imagine in my neighboring friend of a county of a similar size, Nassau County, cost them about $3 million to conduct that primary. On behalf of the people of Suffolk County, I'm asking the Democratic Committee, can I have my $1.5 million in expenditures back? It was for nothing. All we did was take part in a sham, and I think we should get reimbursed for the expenses that we're paying for the election. It did not mean a damn thing.
No, I think that's right. What they've done is they try to control the narrative. They try to gaslight the people. They tell you what you see, you're not seeing. Believe us, regardless of the facts. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to win an election that way by reinventing everything, changing history, hiding out in basements, hiding behind teleprompters, not submitting to debates or to real interviews. And I think it's strongly...
She'll debate. She'll have no choice. And Trump should debate. They
Trump
both should debate.
Absolutely. I want to switch gears.
Yeah, but I don't think that he's got to go into the lion's den again where he's got litigation into ABC. That was a different campaign. I think the rules need to change.
I don't have a problem with that, but they both owe the country.
No, I agree with that.
They are obligated to debate. They owe the country that.
All right. We have a few minutes left. I want to get Eric's thoughts on Israel. There's been these number of targeted assassinations by the state of Israel against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. I just want to know your thoughts on this. And everybody's saying, oh, Israel never should have done that. Well, it seems to me that Israel is doing what it had to do to protect itself. And they're saying, well, it's going to cause a war, escalate the war. The war is escalating because of the Biden-Harris appeasement policies. The war goes on longer, there's more deaths, and can escalate even further because we've shown weakness. But, Eric, what are your thoughts?
Well, I find it quite ironic that some of the most full-throated opponents and critics of the Israelis' targeted killings of these terrorists are the same people that decry the civilian deaths. The Israelis they're committing war crimes. They're killing civilians. Now, putting aside that, of course, Hamas, Hezbollah, and all these other terrorist organizations use civilians as human shields for the sole purpose of making sure as many Palestinian civilians die as possible, and the Israelis do everything they can to avoid those problems. Now the Israelis go after the specific people who are responsible for terrorist attacks against Israel. And they're vilified for that. There are little or no civilian casualties. Only the bad guys are killed, but they are vilified for that. What's the explanation? It goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the show. Israel has the right to defend itself as long as all it is doing is shooting rockets at the sky and people are dodging bombs. But the second they try to retaliate, the second they try to neutralize the people that wish them ill, that's the bridge too far. That's what Jews can't do. It's okay if Jews die. We'll mourn with you. We'll wring our hands. We'll all be upset. We'll go to your funerals. It'll really be terrible. We'll sing a few songs. But when the Jews retaliate to actually truly secure their borders and to ensure their national security and the survival of the state of Israel, that's what they can't do. And the criticism of the Israelis for these targeted killings proves that point, because there are no civilians who are killed. Who have the Israelis killed? We talked about it a little earlier in the show with Congressman Laloda. One of them was Fouad Shakur, the number 2 of Hezbollah. Not only responsible for the attack and killing of 12 beautiful little children Arab, Druze, Israelis in the Golan, but was also responsible for killing 241 Marines. Why didn't we do it? Why are we waiting for the Israelis to do it? But how can you criticize them for doing that? Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas. Spare me this notion that he's a moderate. It's time to wake up, folks. There are no moderates in Hamas. There are no moderates in Tehran. There are no moderates in Hezbollah. There are no moderates in the Houthis. There are no moderates in ISIS. There are no moderates in Al-Qaeda. They don't exist. These are death cults. These are murderers. And the world is better when we eliminate them. And when you criticize a country who is defending its people by killing these people, by killing the evil people, you merely are proving the point that you are anti-Semitic. Because no other country is held to that standard. France wouldn't be, the United States wouldn't be, Canada, China, Brazil, Argentina. You pick a country. No other country would be criticized for doing what the Israelis are doing. The Israelis are being targeted for one reason, because it is a Jewish state. And while we may be upset if Jews die, they are not allowed to defend themselves and secure their borders. That's what that criticism is all about.
Well, I'm not so sure that people cared when Jews die, frankly. Look.
Some do.
Some do.
In fact, I believe most Americans are with Israel.
No,
I think the radical progressive left, although it is ascendant and dominant of the Democrat Party and is running the show, I think the overwhelming majority of Americans are good, decent people who support the state of Israel, recognize its right to exist, and not just to defend itself, but to defend its people by any means necessary within international law.
And I want to thank Jesse Garcia, chair of the Republican Party in Suffolk County, the vice chair of the state Republican Party. I want to thank our friend Eric Levine for joining us, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. I want to thank Congressman Nick LaLota for being with us as our guest, a great congressman from the 1st Congressional District out in Suffolk County who's running for re-election and who I wholeheartedly support as a man of integrity and patriotism and will defend and protect this country. This has been Let the Record Show. We hope you've enjoyed the conversation, and we look forward to being with you again next week. God bless you, your families, and God bless America. Thank you.
This is Let the Record Show.